What's going on, guys? It's your boy John the Liquidator coming back with another video, and it looked like Adam Silver is fed up with these damn WNBA players. Now he has inserted himself in these CBA negotiations. Is this the last lifeline for the WNBA existence? Guys, for this one here, we got to go back all the way up to New York. Let's get it. Let's go.
Adam Silver just inserted himself into the WNBA's collective bargaining negotiations. The NBA commissioner, who oversees a league generating $9 billion annually, is now personally stepping in to save a league that's been losing money for 27 consecutive years. That's not routine oversight. That's crisis management.
Hours ago, going over the current state of it, well, it looked like Adam Silver has to insert himself into this whole situation because for whatever reason, these WNBA owners and these WNBA players cannot figure it out. And
the current CBA deadline is January 9th. That's 8 days away. And according to Front Office Sports, despite daily meetings between league officials and the players' union, sources close to the negotiations say players aren't feeling hopeful. The word they're using isn't optimistic or cautiously confident. It's the opposite. They're preparing for a work stoppage.
Enter the league. She has been the one kind of keeping this thing afloat. Well, it looked like Caitlin Clark impact just might not be enough to keep the WNBA around because as we seen earlier and as we heard a few weeks ago, the WNBA players want to go on strike and they want a share of that revenue. Now, I told y'all, I believe that there is not enough revenue to...
Here's what the league put on the table in their latest proposal. $1 million base salary for top players. Average salary jumping to $417,000. The salary cap increasing from $1.5 million to $5 million per team. Player housing included, charter flights maintained. On paper, that's a 333% increase in team spending capacity. But the players' union rejected it. Why? Revenue sharing.
Profit. I don't know why these players keep trying to erase the past 30 years. Like, y'all can't just press rewind, fast forward, and speed up till today. So what y'all popping right now, y'all has not ever been popping like this before since the league has been around.
The players want 50% of total revenue, the same split NBA players get. Sounds fair on the surface. But here's the critical detail everyone's missing. The league's proposal does include a 50% revenue share, but it's calculated on a specific revenue metric that excludes certain income streams and deducts operational expenses first. Under that formula, players would actually receive less than 15% of the league's total revenue. That gap between 50% of adjusted revenue and 15% of total revenue, that's where this entire negotiation is collapsing.
WNBA, this is what he said. He said, we're available to do whatever is necessary to help get a deal done, Silver said, ahead of the Knicks NBA Cup win over the Spurs. He stated, I'm encouraged by the fact they extended the deadline once again, which we already know that's the one that's coming up in the next 8 days to January. Presumably, the sides wouldn't have been willing to do that unless they thought there was a constructive path to getting a deal.
Adam Silver made his position clear before the Spurs game in December. He said, we're available to do whatever is necessary to help get a deal done. Then he added something revealing, I'm encouraged by the fact they extended the deadline once again. Presumably, the sides wouldn't have been willing to do that unless they thought there was a constructive path to getting a deal done. That's diplomatic language for they're not close, but they're still talking. Notice what he didn't say. He didn't say the players' demands were reasonable. He didn't say the owners were being fair. He positioned himself as the neutral mediator, which tells you both sides have dug in so deep that the commissioner of a completely different league has to personally intervene.
Remain optimistic. We'll get something done. The WNBA and WNBPA and more than a year into negotiations for a new transformational CBA agreement. We all know that deadline is coming up on January the 9th. Now, the results of a second extension as both sides continue to...
Brianna Stewart, who's a vice president of the union's executive committee, publicly stated that Silver's presence would be welcome in negotiations. That's significant. Stewart isn't just a player representative. She's also co-founder of Unrivaled, the new 3-on-3 league launching in January, with 30 players and million-dollar salaries. Some analysts are pointing out a potential conflict of interest here. If the WNBA players strike and the season is delayed or canceled, where do those players go? They go to Unrivaled. Stewart and Nafisa Collier's league suddenly becomes the only option for elite women's basketball in America. Whether that's intentional strategy or convenient timing, the optics are problematic.
Rocket science. It is not rocket science with what is going on with the current state of the WNBA. Let's get back to the article, man. So the article goes on to say, Adam Silver stated, more often than not, we're the ones. Oh, no, I believe this is Kelsey Plum. She stated, more often than not, we're the ones that we are willing to compress, and there still aren't big budget. Oh, this is Breanna Stewart, actually. My apologies.
Let's talk about the fundamental problem nobody wants to acknowledge. The WNBA has operated at a loss for 27 years. Not break even, not slim margins. Consistent, substantial losses covered entirely by NBA subsidy. The league doesn't publish detailed financials, but estimates suggest cumulative losses exceeding $500 million since 1997. Last season saw a spike in attendance and viewership, driven almost entirely by Caitlin Clark's rookie campaign. Indiana Fever games averaged 1.4 million viewers when she played. League average, without her, under 500,000. That's 280% difference attributed to one player.
We're the ones that we are willing to compress, and there still aren't big budget. Oh, this is Breanna Stewart, actually. My apologies. Goes on to say, who is also as vice president of the union's executive. Now, there is a lot of people speaking about Breanna Stewart and Unrivaled being a conflict of interest. Unrivaled as a right.
So when players demand revenue sharing comparable to the NBA, they're asking for a percentage of revenue that doesn't cover costs. The NBA's 50-50 split works because the league generates $9 billion in revenue against roughly $4 billion in expenses. The WNBA generates approximately $200 million in revenue against an estimated $250 million in expenses. The math doesn't work the same way. Owners have invested for nearly 3 decades without profit, betting on future growth. Now that growth is finally materializing, attendance up 48%, merchandise sales up 500%, players want to immediately capture 50% of it. From the ownership perspective, that's asking to share the upside after they've absorbed 100% of the downside for 27 years.
I'm chill player or something like that to happen. I don't believe it's even going to be relevant, man. Now, it goes on to say earlier this month, a proposal included $1 million base salary, according to multiple sources familiar with the negotiations. In addition, the league proposed a revenue sharing model that would give players 50% of revenue metric that would not include all revenue and would have some expenses deducted. Under this proposal model, players would end up receiving less than 15% of league's total revenue.
The players' counter argument is equally compelling. They point out that their labor creates the product. Without them playing at an elite level, there's no WNBA to invest in. They argue that the recent growth proves the league was undervalued and undermarketed, not fundamentally unprofitable. If proper investment in marketing, broadcast deals, and player promotion had happened earlier, maybe the league would have been profitable years ago. Breanna Stewart said in December that, more often than not, we're the ones that are willing to compress, and there still are big budget gap. Translation, the players feel they've already made concessions and ownership is still lowballing them.
Now, that was the latest proposal that the ladies had an issue with. And to me, I don't get why they have an issue with that proposal, because that proposal seemed like that was something reasonable. But something that we have to keep an eye on here, on at least on my channel, is what is Caitlin Clark going to do? Project B is still...
Here's where it gets complicated. The league's revenue sharing proposal isn't just about percentages. It's about which revenue gets counted. The 50% figure the league offered applies to what they're calling basketball-related income, a defined category that excludes things like expansion fees, certain sponsorship deals, and league-owned media revenue, after operational expenses are deducted from that narrower revenue pool. The player's 50% share ends up being roughly 15% of total money coming into the league. That's not a rounding error. That's a fundamentally different deal than what players thought they were negotiating. When the union realized the actual dollar amounts that formula would produce, they rejected it. Because here's the thing, you can call it 50%, But if you're calculating 50% of 30% of revenue, you're really offering 15%.
Right now, it don't look like it's going to be a WNBA. If there's not a WNBA, does that bring forth the next question that will she potentially take on the project be offered? I don't know, man. Guys, get down in the comments.
The NBA doesn't calculate their revenue sharing this way. Their 50-50 split is straightforward. Basketball-related income is broadly defined, and players get half. The WNBA's proposal uses a much narrower definition with more deductions. Whether that's justified given the league's financial situation, or whether it's owners trying to have it both ways, claiming they're offering 50% while structuring the math to pay much less. That's the core dispute. And this is why Adam Silver is getting involved, because both sides can legitimately claim they're being reasonable, and both sides can legitimately claim the other is being unreasonable. That's not a negotiation problem, that's a fundamental disagreement about what the league is worth and who deserves credit for its potential. The January 9th deadline isn't arbitrary. That's when the current CBA expires. After that date, if there's no new agreement, the league can impose a lockout or players can strike. Either scenario means no games, no paychecks, and no momentum from last season's breakthrough year. This is the second extension of negotiations. The original deadline was in October. They pushed it to November, then to January. Each extension suggests progress is being made, but also that significant gaps remain. You don't need 3 months of daily meetings to finalize minor details. You need 3 months because core economic terms are still unresolved. Silver said he remains optimistic a deal will get done. But front office sports reported that players aren't sharing that optimism. When one side is optimistic and the other isn't, that usually means one side thinks the other will eventually cave. The question is, who has more leverage? Owners can survive a lost season financially. They've been losing money anyway. Players can't. Most WNBA players earn between $70,000 and $200,000 annually. Good money, but not sit out a year without income money. International leagues pay well, but those contracts are already signed for this season. Unrivaled offers an alternative, but it's only 30 players and it's a 3-on-3 league, not a full WNBA replacement. And then there's Caitlin Clark, the player who single-handedly drove last season's rating spike. Sophie Cunningham said a few weeks ago that everyone's watching to see what Clark does about Project Rock, an alternative league concept that's been floated. If there's no WNBA season this year, does Clark explore other options? Does she go overseas? Does she wait it out? Because here's what nobody's saying out loud: if Caitlin Clark isn't playing, a significant portion of last year's new audience disappears. Indiana Fever games averaged over 1 million viewers. League average was under 600,000. She's not the entire league, but she's a disproportionate amount of its current marketability. That gives her unusual leverage. If she publicly supports the player's position and says she'll strike with them, that strengthens the union's hand considerably. If she stays neutral or expresses frustration with the process, that weakens it. And if she explores alternative options, playing overseas, joining a different league, taking a year off, that's catastrophic for both sides. The league needs her. The players' union needs her, and she knows it. So far, she's stayed quiet. That's probably the smartest play. Let both sides come to her with their best offers and see who blinks first. Let's zoom out for a second and talk about what's really at stake here. This isn't just about salaries or revenue percentages. This is about whether the WNBA can transition from a subsidized development league into a sustainable professional business. 27 years is a long time to operate at a loss. At some point, ownership, whether it's NBA team owners or private equity investors, needs to see a path to profitability. Last season provided that path. Ratings up, attendance up, merchandise up, sponsorship interest up. All the indicators pointed in the right direction for the first time in league history. Now, just as that momentum is building, the entire operation might shut down over a labor dispute. From a business perspective, this is insane timing. You don't go on strike when you're finally winning. You don't lock out your workforce when the product is finally selling. But that's exactly what might happen because both sides are making decisions based on principle rather than pragmatism. The players feel they've been underpaid for decades, and they're not going to accept another undervalued deal just because the timing is awkward. The owners feel they've invested hundreds of millions without return, and they're not going to give away the first profitable years just because players suddenly have leverage. Both positions are understandable. Both are also potentially suicidal for the league. Adam Silver's involvement is the league's last pressure relief valve. He's got credibility with players. He's been supportive of women's basketball publicly. He's pushed for WNBA investment. He's used his platform to tote the league. He's also got credibility with owners. He runs the most successful basketball league in the world. He understands their financial concerns, and he's not going to recommend a deal that bankrupts franchises. If anyone can broker a compromise both sides can live with, it's him. But even Silver can't create money that doesn't exist. He can't make the WNBA's financials work like the NBA's when the revenue gap is 45-1. What he can do is get creative with the structure. Maybe that means the NBA provides additional subsidy for 3 years, while revenue sharing gradually phases in. Maybe it means tying player compensation to growth metrics. If revenue hits certain targets, players get larger percentages. Maybe it means shorter contract terms so both sides can renegotiate sooner based on actual performance rather than projections. The point is, there are solutions available if both sides are willing to think beyond traditional CBA structures. The question is whether egos and principles will allow that creativity or whether both sides would rather fight on principle even if it means mutual destruction. Here's what makes this particularly frustrating for fans. Last season was the most exciting year in WNBA history. Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese, rookie rivalry, Indiana Fever's worst-to-playoff transformation, Aces going for a three-peat, storylines everywhere. Casual fans who'd never watched women's basketball were suddenly buying tickets and jerseys. All of that momentum, all of that cultural breakthrough, could evaporate if there's a work stoppage. Sports fans have short attention spans. If the WNBA isn't there in summer 2025, those casual fans will watch something else, and they might not come back. The players know this. The owners know this. Adam Silver definitely knows this, which is why his involvement now is so critical. He's essentially saying, you two can't afford to screw this up, so I'm going to make sure you don't. But he can't force an agreement. He can mediate, he can suggest compromises, he can apply pressure. But ultimately, the players' union and the league have to agree. And right now, with 8 days until the deadline, sources say they're not close. There's also a generational divide within the players' union that's not getting enough attention. Veterans like Breanna Stewart, Diana Taurasi, and Sylvia Fowles have played through decades of low pay. They've supplemented their income playing overseas every offseason. They've dealt with commercial flights, poor facilities, and minimal media coverage. For them, this negotiation is about finally getting compensated fairly after years of building the league. Younger players like Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and Cameron Brink are entering a different WNBA. They've got major endorsement deals independent of their playing contracts. Clark's Nike deal alone is reportedly worth $28 million over 8 years. She'll make more from endorsements in 1 year than most WNBA veterans earned in their entire playing careers. So when the union votes on whether to accept a deal or strike, those two groups have very different financial situations. Veterans need their WNBA salary. Rookies with major endorsements can afford to sit out a season. That creates tension within the union about how hard to push and what's worth striking over. If the union fractures, if younger players break ranks and say they'll play under the league's proposed terms, the union loses all leverage. That's probably the owner's best-case scenario. Wait out the strike until financial pressure splits the players' coalition, but it's also incredibly risky. Because if the union holds together and players actually sit out the season, the league loses its breakthrough moment. All the progress from last year, gone. The new fans, gone. The momentum toward better TV deals and sponsorships, gone. Owners might think they're calling the players' bluff, but this isn't poker. This is mutual assured destruction. Both sides lose if there's no season. The only question is who loses more. Let's talk about what happens if they don't reach a deal by January 9th. 3 scenarios are possible. First, the league imposes a lockout, meaning ownership refuses to let players work under the expired CBA terms while negotiations continue. Games are canceled, players aren't paid, and the season is delayed or eliminated. Second, players go on strike, refusing to play until their demands are met. Same result, no games, no paychecks,